You're listening to The Jacob Valk Show. He's breaking down the latest and greatest in sports as only he can. Follow him on Twitter at RealJacobValk. Here he is, Jacob Valk.
Hello, sports fans! Welcome to a special Festivus edition of the Jacob Valk Show. That is right, it's Festivus for the rest of us. I am Jacob Valk, and I have the biggest Cheshire Cat grin on my face right now. Not because I'm thinking about Seinfeld. Jerry Seinfeld is a Knicks fan. He's not too happy right about now. I'm over the moon right now because I just saw the Brooklyn Nets dismantle, mutilate, eviscerate, whatever verb you want to use, the Golden State Warriors. That game was over in the first quarter. The Nets couldn't miss. Kyrie Irving looked incredible. 26 points in 25 minutes. Kevin Durant, his first game in a year and a half. 22 points in 24 minutes. Karis LeVert off the bench. 20 points in 24 minutes. He nearly had a double-double. I can honestly say, watching them yesterday, I have never been happier as a Brooklyn Nets fan. I remember the runs that they went on in 2002 and 2003. I remember the Vince Carter trade. I remember the Deron Williams trade. I remember the Joe Johnson trade. I remember the D'Angelo Russell trade. I remember Adrian Wojnarowski's clean sweep tweet. I remember Kyrie Irving dropping 50 his first game as a Brooklyn Net. Watching them yesterday was the happiest I have ever been as a Brooklyn Nets fan. This team is the real deal. You saw some of those shots that Durant and Kyrie made. How do you defend those? Good defense by the Warriors. Didn't matter. Joe Harris is the three-point shooter. He just needs to work on his confidence a little bit. If you have the open shot, take it. That's what everyone wants you to do. Take the open three. He'll get there, though. Don't worry about it. DeAndre Jordan, 11 rebounds in just 17 minutes. Here's how much of a destruction this was. The Nets were up by 21 in the first quarter. Whatever Durant and Kyrie wanted to do, they did. The Nets were up by 38 points at one time. Their defense was fantastic. Active hands, contesting shots. Did Steph Curry get his? Of course. He's Steph Curry. And James Wiseman looked really good in his first ever NBA game. But the Nets held the Warriors to just 37% from the field and 30% from beyond the arc. The Nets had 11 steals. They out-rebounded the Warriors by 10. It was so bad for the Warriors that Steve Nash was able to set a record yesterday. The Brooklyn Nets became the first team ever to play 15 players in the same game. I understand that no team was able to do that before yesterday, but there was no guarantee that the Nets were gonna do that. It was so much of a blowout that the Nets were able to empty their bench with 7 minutes left to go in the fourth quarter. Let me tell you, without there being a lengthy preseason and a big training camp, those minutes from the reserves is really going to benefit them in the long run. It was really good for them to get their feet wet. It was good for everyone to get their feet wet. Everyone was worried about how the Nets would do coming back from the long layoff. I think it's safe to say that they're fine. They shook off the rust really quickly. I mean, think about this. On national television, the entire NBA world watching, the Nets made a statement. You may have forgotten how dominant Kevin Durant was. You may have forgotten how dominant Kyrie Irving was. Shame on you. Because these guys are two of the best players in the NBA. This team is a legitimate title threat. I can't tell you how many people called me a homer for saying that the Nets were going to win the whole thing. This is why. This is what they're capable of. I understand it's just one game. I'm not saying that the Nets are going to blow out all of their opponents. They're going to win every game that they play by over 20 points. But this is what they're capable of. They just destroyed a really good Warriors team on national television. This was a statement game for the Nets. Everyone was picking the Lakers to repeat as NBA champions. Everyone was picking the Bucks to represent the East in the NBA Finals. Everyone was hyping up the Sixers for what they did this offseason in adding Seth Curry and Danny Green. The Nets just said, don't forget about us. We're here. We're back. We're at 100%. And we have just as good a shot to win the whole thing as anyone. Like I said, I've never been happier as a Brooklyn Nets fan than I was watching them yesterday. The one negative thing, this is just the jaded part of my brain talking. The one negative thing, Spencer Dinwiddie really didn't look comfortable as the starting shooting guard. Only had 9 points, turned the ball over 3 times. It's going to take him a while to really get used to that role. But in a perfect world, I'd like him to be a little more comfortable. Landry Shamet in his first game as a net only shot 1 for 4 from beyond the arc. Taurean Prince in 16 minutes only attempted 1-3. But in reality, all that is nitpicking. Dinwiddie will be fine. Shamet will definitely be fine. Prince will be okay. All is right in Brooklyn. That's just the jaded part of my brain talking. But all isn't right in California. The Warriors need to get some things figured out very quickly. Besides Curry and Wiseman, no one showed up for him. I understand Klay Thompson is out for the year, but that's why they traded for Kelly Oubre. What did Oubre and Wiggins do? They combined for just 7 for 30 shooting from the field. Just 2 for 12 from beyond the arc. They only had 19 points between them. They turned the ball over 7 times. Let me just say this. Kelly Oubre is not a shooting guard. Andrew Wiggins is a shooting guard. Put Oubre at the 3, put Wiggins at the 2. It's not hard. I'm not saying that would fix everything, but it would help. That was a ridiculously stupid decision by Steve Kerr. Oubre and Wiggins are incredibly important for the Warriors. Curry and Wiseman can't do it all themselves. Steph Curry needs help. You saw what happened when he was the only perimeter option. The Nets were able to key in on him. They forced him into contested shots. Does Steph Curry have the ability to make contested threes? Yes. But those really aren't the shots you want him taking. And James Wiseman, in a perfect world, do you want him being your second scoring option? Wouldn't you rather have it be Wiggins or Oubre? Those guys are incredibly important to the Warriors. They traded D'Angelo Russell for Wiggins. They traded for Kelly Oubre because Klay Thompson is out for the year. They have the ability to put up 15 to 20 points a game. I picked the Warriors to finish third in the West because of their wing. Also Curry and Wiseman and Green, obviously, but I thought their starting lineup was incredible. I thought they had the shooting to make it work. 2 for 12 from beyond the arc? That's not going to get it done. Those guys need to get their heads screwed on straight quickly. And the Warriors are going to need to figure out their bench quickly. Brad Wanamaker was dreadful. Jordan Poole was dreadful. The 3 best players for the Warriors off their bench yesterday were Marquise Chris, Juan Toscano Anderson, and Michael Mulder. All due respect to those 3 guys, you don't want them being the best players off your bench. That's not going to end well for you. The Warriors have some things to figure out. They've got to get their wing back in order, and they've got to figure out their bench. Can they sort all that out? Absolutely. It's just one game. I wouldn't be overly nervous if I was a Warriors fan. Is it disconcerting what you saw yesterday? Absolutely. But these guys do have the ability to right the ship. I wouldn't scream bloody murder just yet. Moving on now to Clippers-Lakers. A game that looked like it was going to be a blowout early on. The Clippers were up by 22 at one point in the second quarter. Then the Lakers came storming back. They tied the game in the third. And then after that, the Clippers ran them out of the building. The reality is, this game wasn't as close as the score would indicate. The Clippers should have won by 15, not 7. I saw on Twitter a lot of people not as happy for Paul George as I expect them to be. Here's a guy who's really talented, one of the 20 best players in the NBA, no shows in the bubble. The mental anguish that he went through in Disney is real. It was tough what we asked these players to do. Was it disappointing to see? Absolutely. You had a right to get upset at him, but you also have to understand that it's reasonable for him to struggle because of that stress. Now that he's not in the bubble, he's with his family, he's got all that out of the way, he can dominate. He was the best player on the floor yesterday. Not Kawhi, not LeBron, not AD. Paul George. The guy dropped 33 points. That's not to say Kawhi was bad. He dropped 26, although 1 for 8 from beyond the arc. That doesn't work for me. Reggie Miller said this during the broadcast, and a really bad job by TNT for how they decided to do that game. The delay was so obvious. I don't know what the fix is. Maybe you delay the game for us so that it syncs with what the announcer sees. But you saw a big play, and then 2 seconds later, the announcer reacted to it. Kevin Harlan and Reggie Miller were stepping all over each other. Those guys are really good broadcasters. I'm not knocking them. It's just impossible to do your job like that. There's got to be a better way to do it. But going back to my original point, Reggie Miller said something that was 100% right. Harlan asked him, why did the Clippers choke? Why did they blow a 3-1? Miller gave most of the credit to the Nuggets. It's not that the Clippers are bad. They just went up against a really resilient Nuggets team. I'm not saying the Clippers are without blame 100%, but all the talk about the Clippers being dead in the water, they're not going to win with Kawhi and George, no, I never believed that for a second. They did the right thing in retooling their roster. Ty Lue knows how to coach superstars. Kenny Atkinson as an assistant coach will help exponentially. He should be a head coach. The Clippers retooled their roster perfectly. Serge Ibaka had 15 points in 20 minutes. Luke Kennard gives an elite floor-stretching option to a Clippers team that really didn't have that last year. Now, Kennard wasn't great yesterday. He only had 4 points. But you could see how they're going to use him. him in a triangle with Kawhi Leonard and Serge Ibaka, that can work. Leonard's a guy who's more effective from the mid-range than he is from beyond the arc. You've got to let him play his game. Don't try to force him into anything else. I think he can work in the triangle. I think he can work on isolations. On a weaker defender, you saw it. It can work. On a stronger defender, like Anthony Davis, it's not going to work. But I like the sets that the Clippers are running for Kawhi and Paul George. They make sense from a pure basketball IQ perspective. And Nicholas Batum as the guy who's going to do the dirty work, play solid defense, distribute, get rebounds, won't take a lot of shots. That's going to work. The Clippers are fine. Do I think they're better than the Lakers? No, I don't. I do think the Lakers will beat them in a 7-game series. But yesterday, they were the much better team. There's no question about that. As for the Lakers, you can really pin this loss on two people. Kentavious Caldwell-Pope and Marc Gasol. Caldwell-Pope played 23 minutes and only had 9 points. You do want him to be better than that. You do want him taking more than 4 shots. He wasn't awful or anything, but you just do want him being better. The seminal reason that the Lakers lost was because Marc Gasol only played 12 minutes. The guy got in foul trouble early. They had to play Montrezl Harrell, Kyle Kuzma, and Markieff Morris more than they wanted to. That really hurt the Lakers. It enabled guys like Ibaka and Ivica Zubac to have as big of an impact as they did. Zubac had 11 points off the bench. Bad game by Gasol. Bad game by Caldwell-Pope. It was nice to see Talen Horton-Tucker contribute. He had 6 points in 10 minutes. Yes, it's Talen Horton-Tucker, not Talen Hunter-Tucker, as Kevin Harlan said. I wouldn't make too much of a big deal about this if I was a Lakers fan. LeBron had 22 points, Anthony Davis had 18, Dennis Schroeder nearly had a triple-double. It's just one game. Is it a bad look to never lead in a nationally televised game? The answer is yes. But I do think the Lakers are fine. I'm not worried about them getting killed in the interior. That's because Marc Gasol got into foul trouble early. That's not going to happen every game. The Lakers are fine. You don't want to write anyone off after just one game. Can you say the teams are going to be great after one game? Depending on the team, yes. But if it's a team that you thought was going to be really good and they laid an egg on opening night, pump the brakes. Alright, now I'll give you some college football Valk talk. And I'm going to go chronologically. That means I'm going to start with the famous Idaho Potato Bowl, Nevada beating Tulane. I gotta tell ya, I expected Michael Pratt to be better than this. Usually he is. In a game this year, he never threw more than one interception. He threw 3 picks yesterday. He got sacked 8 times. I understand that the Green Wave offensive line was dreadful. The Nevada defense did a great job of constantly pestering Pratt. Lawson Hall, Tristan Nichols, and Trevor Price all had 2 sacks. But Pratt had to play better to give the Green Wave a real chance of winning. The guy completed less than 50% of his passes. He threw for just 168 yards. That's not going to get the job done. I was not impressed with Pratt yesterday at all. I was impressed with Cameron Carroll and Stephon Huderson. Carroll had 10 carries for 120 yards and a touchdown. Huderson had 10 carries for 52 yards. The one thing I didn't like was that Willie Fritz had Pratt run the ball 18 times. You don't want him doing that. You have a solid backfield duo in Huderson and Carroll. Use that. This was a bad game by Tulane. I was not impressed with them at all. I thought they were going to play a lot better. You look at the box score, you see they only lost by 11. It felt like a lot more. It felt like 28, let me tell you. As for Nevada, what did I tell you about Carson Strong? I told you that Strong's a really good quarterback. I told you he made a big leap from his freshman to sophomore season. The guy had a great game yesterday. Completed 22 of his 28 passes for over 270 yards and 5 touchdowns. This is what happens in an air raid offense. And the thing that Matt Mumme did, Matt Mumme, the son of Hal Mumme, the legendary architect of the air raid, was he came out in I formations to start the game. They were running the football a lot. It looked like a traditional offense. Tulane wasn't expecting that. What that did was, when you saw more of the traditional air raid setup, Tulane didn't know what to prepare for. Is Strong gonna air it out? Or is a guy like Devontae Lee or Toa Taua gonna run it down our throats? Lee and Taua both had over 100 rushing yards. Taua was the Wolfpack's leading receiver yesterday. 6 catches for 77 yards and a touchdown. Cole Turner played well. 5 catches for 60 yards and 2 touchdowns. Romeo Daubs, the guy who I thought was going to go off, really didn't. 5 catches for 42 yards. But that's the beauty of the air raid. If one receiver is taken away, it's very easy for other receivers to step up. This was a great game by Carson Strong, a great game by the Wolfpack. Let me tell you, Boise State is going to need a new head coach. I'll get into that a little later. It wouldn't surprise me if they went with Matt Mumme. When was Boise State the most successful? When they had a guy who pushed the envelope on offense in Chris Peterson. What does Matt Mumme do? He pushes the envelope on offense. And who knows, maybe you can get his father to be offensive coordinator. Or in some kind of an informal role. That would make a ton of sense. That's who I would target if I was the Broncos. Moving on now to the Boca Raton Bowl, where Zach Wilson made a very convincing argument that he is the second best quarterback in this draft class. What did I say yesterday? If Wilson balls out in this bowl game and Justin Fields lays an egg in the Sugar Bowl, I'd have to reevaluate how I have the quarterbacks ranked. I'll say this. As it stands right now, my order on quarterbacks is Lawrence, Fields, Wilson, Trask, Lance, Jones. Is there still time for that to change? Absolutely. I'm not writing Fields off yet, though. I really need to see how he plays in the Sugar Bowl before I put him behind Wilson. But Wilson did his job. The guy was electric. Completed 26 of his 34 passes for 425 yards. He threw 3 touchdowns, rushed for 2 more. He did everything you wanted him to do. He got all his receivers involved. Isaac Rex had a huge game, 5 catches for 96 yards and 2 touchdowns. Lopini Katoa had 4 catches for 90 yards. Neil Pau'u had 5 catches for 86 yards and a touchdown. Dax Milne had 7 catches for 70 yards. Wilson did what he needs to do in order to become the second best quarterback in this draft class. He's not there yet, though. I need to see how Justin Fields plays in the Sugar Bowl. I'm not knocking Wilson. I like Wilson a lot. But the evaluation on him is incomplete. The evaluation on Trask is incomplete. The evaluation on Jones is incomplete. In all fairness to those guys, I need to see how they play in their bowl games. But Zach Wilson did what he needs to do to become the second best quarterback in this draft class. I also want to shout out Tyler Algier for the great game he had. 19 carries for 173 yards and a touchdown. UCF couldn't stop BYU to save their lives. Everyone said this game was going to be a shootout. The Cougars held up their end of the bargain. The Knights didn't. Dylan Gabriel played a very conservative game. Completed less than 50% of his passes. He only averaged 4.8 yards per attempt. This is an offense that usually airs the ball out. No wide receiver really impressed me. The guys who impressed me the most from the Knights were their running backs, Greg McCrae and Otis Anderson. They each had over 70 rushing yards. McCrae had a touchdown. Good game for him. Other than that, UCF had nothing going on offense. I didn't think BYU was great defensively or anything. Did I think Kalani Sitake had a good game plan? Yes. I think he did a good job of taking away the deep balls. So Josh Heupel or Heupel, again, I don't remember how to pronounce his name, was forced to be a little more conservative. That was well done. But the reality is UCF should have been able to scheme around it. They weren't able to. Bad job by the Knights. Great job by the Cougars. Zach Wilson looks like the real deal. The most I'm willing to say right now is that I think he's going to have a really good NFL career. But I can't say whether or not he's better than Justin Fields yet. I just can't do that. Alright, now it's time to preview today's 2 bowl games. And I'll start with the New Orleans Bowl. Georgia Southern taking on Louisiana Tech. You're going to see a low-scoring game here. The over-under on this game is 48.5. That means the odds makers are expecting a 27-21 game. Take the under. I don't think either team is getting 3 touchdowns. Both these teams have their starting quarterbacks out. Shea Wertz is doubtful with an undisclosed injury. That means the Eagles are going to have to start their backup quarterback, right? No. Their backup quarterback is Justin Tomlin. He's out with an ankle injury. So Georgia Southern will be quarterbacked in this game by Miller Mosley. It is okay if you don't know anything about Miller Mosley. I'll be honest with you. I don't know too much about him. But I'll say this. It doesn't bother me that Georgia Southern is starting their 3rd-string quarterback. Chad Lunsford runs an option offense. You can run option offenses with your 3rd-string quarterback and be successful. It happened with Lynn Bowden at Kentucky last year. The beauty of this offense, Lunsford has done a great job with Georgia Southern. The beauty of this offense is you have no idea who's going to run the football. Is it going to be the quarterback? Is it going to be Logan Wright, Wesley Kennedy III, Gerald Green, Matt LaRoche? I can say this, it's not going to be J.D. King. He's out for the year with a knee injury. But again, the option offense is an offense that you really don't need all your A1 guys in to be successful with it. Georgia Southern has the 10th most rushing yards per game in the nation. That's because they don't just have one guy. Defensively, they have a couple pretty talented guys. Raymond Johnson III has 5 sacks. Derek Canteen has 3 interceptions and 9 pass deflections. They're pretty talented players. When you look at the Bulldogs, they're also without their starting quarterback. Luke Anthony is out with an ankle injury, so it's going to be on Aaron Allen to lead Louisiana Tech in this game. I don't see that ending well for Louisiana Tech. They don't have the type of offense that you can just plug in anyone and it's going to work. Skip Holtz has a more traditional setup. And I like Skip Holtz, by the way. He's done a really good job with Louisiana Tech. Israel Tucker is their starting running back. He's nothing special. Their best wide receiver is Adrian Hardy. He opted out of the season on November 19th. Louisiana Tech is really patching this offense together with bubblegum and baling wire. So is Georgia Southern. But again, the Bulldogs' scheme isn't conducive to that. Georgia Southern's is. Defensively, do they have a few good players on the Bulldogs? Yes. Milton Williams, B.J. Williamson, and Cedric Woods are talented players. And they'll get theirs in this game. Like I said, I think this is going to be a low-scoring game. I don't think either team is going to score more than 24 points, to tell you the truth. Both teams have been hit hard by injuries and opt-outs. Like I said, it's more conducive to Georgia Southern than it is Louisiana Tech. It's going to hurt the Eagles less. Even though it's in New Orleans, I'm picking against Louisiana Tech. Give me Georgia Southern. Moving on now to the Montgomery Bowl. That features FAU taking on Memphis. When you look at the Owls, they are the prototypical defense-first team. They do not have a good offense. No one on that offense scares me. Nick Tronte, James Charles, TJ Chase. None of those guys are any good. But it's their defense that has led them to a 5-3 record. There's a reason that Willie Taggart didn't work in the bigger conferences. Those conferences are built more on offense. Can you have defense-first teams? You've got to be able to supplement them with the running game, like Georgia. Taggart doesn't do that. He believes in all defense. It makes him work in the smaller conferences, not in the bigger conferences. But back to FAU, Leighton McCarthy is one of the most underrated defensive players in the nation. The guy has 8 sacks. Jalen Joyner has 5.5 sacks. Chris Jones has 3.5 sacks. Taja Young is a really good cornerback. Amon Ross is a really talented safety. Zion Gilbert and Roman Mungan are talented defensive backs. In terms of opposing points per game, the Owls have the 9th best defense in the nation. They've only given up 16.5 points per game. But the reality is they haven't faced a team like Memphis. They haven't faced a quarterback like Brady White. White's a good quarterback. He's completed over 60% of his passes, thrown for over 3,000 yards, 28 touchdowns, to 9 interceptions. He's done a really good job leading this Tigers offense. Their running game isn't anything special, but it doesn't need to be when you have the pass catchers that White has. Calvin Austin III is one of the most underrated wide receivers in the nation. The guy had 60 catches this year for 1,025 yards and 10 touchdowns. Taj Washington, 35 catches for 638 yards and 6 touchdowns. Sean Dykes, the safety valve, 47 catches for 581 yards and 7 touchdowns. And Memphis can also get it done defensively. Morris Joseph Jr. has 8 sacks. Wardalis Duckworth, Joseph Dorcius, and O'Brien Goodson all have at least 3 sacks. Quindell Johnson, Rodney Owens, and Jacoby Francis are really talented defensive backs. They all have multiple interceptions and at least 5 pass deflections. Sylvante Oliver also has 5 pass deflections. But he's not the ball hawk that those other guys are. The reality is, FAU hasn't gone up against a team like Memphis. Maybe Marshall. But you can make the argument that Memphis is better than Marshall. And Marshall beat FAU. I don't see how the Owls win this game. Give me the Tigers. Alright, now I'll talk about Brian Harsin leaving his alma mater, Boise State, to go to Auburn. There were rumors that Harsin was upset with the powers that be at Boise State. He wanted them to move conferences. He wanted to be in a bigger conference in the Mountain West Conference. He was tired of playing in the more minor bowl games, like the Poinsettia Bowl, the Cactus Bowl, the Las Vegas Bowl. He wants to have regular appearances in the Fiesta Bowl. He'll get that at Auburn. Does he have a tough road ahead of him? The answer is yes. This year, Auburn went 6-4. They're not the team that they were under Gus Malzahn in the early part of his time at Auburn. But they still have talented players. Bo Nix, Tank Bigsby. They're in Auburn. A lot of players from that area, really talented high schoolers, are gonna want to go to Auburn. Auburn will always be relevant. They just need a coach to get them back into the national title picture. Harsin will do that. He was really good at Boise State. This year he went 5-2. The year before that, 12-2. He always has Boise State in the AP poll. Are they ever going to get into a CFP title game? No. Because they play in the Mountain West Conference. That's Harsin's point. He wants to play for a national championship. He can do that with Auburn. I don't mind him leaving. It makes sense for him. It makes sense for Auburn. Like I said, Boise State can hire Matt Mumme, and they'll be set. Alright, now I'll give you some NHL Valk talk. And I'll start with the NHL fixing one of the worst rules in all of sports. You know how when you're watching a hockey game and a guy's skate is a millimeter off the ice before he brings the puck over the blue line and that constitutes offsides? The NHL is altering that rule. Now a player's skate will no longer have to be touching the blue line for that player to be onside. Basically, the blue line is being extended up into the air, if you can picture that. Instead of needing to touch the ice, you can have your skate off the ice. Without getting into the whole minutia of the rule, that's basically what the rule is designed to do. To make it so you can have your skate off the ice and not be considered offsides. It's long overdue. The reality is, the way these coaches' challenges were being done, with a player's skate off the ice by a fraction of an inch, that's not what the offsides rule is there for. The guy's waiting by the blue line, and he picks up his skate a fraction of a second too early. Oh my God, call the play back. I'm glad that the NHL is amending the rule. Before I laud this change, I want to see how it looks when games are actually played. But it's a good job by the league to fix this issue. It was one of the worst rules in sports. Nice job, Gary Bettman. Moving on now to the Lightning, locking up a couple of their guys. They signed Eric Cernak to a 3-year deal worth just under $9 million and Jan Rutta to a 2-year deal worth $2.6 million. I gotta tell ya, these are bad moves by the Lightning. Cernak and Rutta are nothing special. Can Cernak get to a high level? He's 23 years old, it's not impossible. But last year he had 12 points in 67 games. He was a plus 11. The year before, he had 16 points in 58 games. He was a plus 25. In 25 games in the bubble, he only had 4 points. You're giving this guy just under $3 million a year. That is a massive overpay. I understand that Nikita Kucherov is going to be on long-term injured reserve, and you gain $9.5 million in salary cap space because of that. But you can't just throw that around willy-nilly. You've got to be able to sign Cernak for less. It's just that simple. And Jan Rutta, too. What has Jan Rutta done to earn this contract? He's a solid top 6 defenseman. There's nothing wrong with him. But this guy only played 5 games in the bubble. In the regular season last year, he had 7 points in 33 games. You're giving this guy 2 years? 2.6 mil total? That's ridiculous. I understand that after Hedman, Sergachev, and McDonough, the Lightning defense falls off. They did win the Stanley Cup with Cernak and Rutta, so you wanted to bring him back, but you've got to do it the right way. These are massive overpays by the Lightning. There's no other way to say it. Moving on now to the Predators, signing Mikael Granlund to a 1-year deal worth $3.75 million, and Eric Howla to a 1-year deal worth $1.75 million. I'll start with Granlund. I really like him. There was a point in time where I thought he was going to be a future first liner for a long time. It seems like he's settled into that second or third line role. He's solid defensively, doesn't take a lot of penalties. Last year he had 30 points in 63 games. He played well for Nashville last year. The contract may be a little high, but only a teeny bit. I can't get too upset at it. Good move there by Nashville. And a really good move to bring in Eric Howler. Really good third liner. Doesn't take a lot of penalties. Against the Islanders in the bubble, I thought he was solid. I didn't see him do anything wrong. The Predators did a really good job here in upgrading their depth scoring. We all know their big guns. Ryan Johansson, Matt Duchene, Philip Forsberg, Roman Josi, Ryan Ellis. They did a good job here in upgrading their depth. Both these moves make perfect sense for the Preds. The last story that I want to talk about concerns the Devils re-signing Mackenzie Blackwood to a 3-year deal worth $8.4 million. That's $2.8 million a year. And this is a good move for the Devils. Blackwood looks like he's going to be a solid goalie in this league. He was the starting goalie for the Devils last year and finished with a 22-14-8 record with a .915 save percentage and a 2.77 goals against. He got some Calder Trophy votes. He's a solid young goalie. No one's going to be mistaking him for Martin Brodeur anytime soon. But he's a good goalie to lead them past the Corey Schneider era. I think Blackwood is going to continue his good play for a while. $2.8 million a year for a good starting goalie is more than reasonable. This move makes sense for both sides. Solid job by the Devils. I hope that you have a happy Festivus and a very Merry Christmas, or a happy Kwanzaa if that's what you celebrate. Enjoy the holidays, enjoy spending it with your loved ones, enjoy watching basketball. No show tomorrow, no show Friday. New York Jets instant recap comes your way after they lose to the Browns on Sunday, or beat the Browns on Sunday. I didn't expect them to beat the Rams, so anything's possible. Another 3-day week next week. Hard to believe I'm already thinking about New Year's. Where did this year go? My goodness gracious. Until next time, I am Jacob Valk saying that in 1930, Babe Ruth had a better year than Herbert Hoover.